Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Because impeachment is the news du jour, we're going to start with that, but then we're going to talk about the worldwide problem that workers face and how Bernie is the only one who can solve that problem and how all the other candidates are cheap imitations. So let's get started here. Jimmy Dore has some elucidation for us.
So again, we have to go back to why all this is happening, I think, right? So why did the Democrats push Russiagate for 3 years and then immediately drop it and switch over to impeachment? And why are they doing this? Well, what do you mean? Well, as they've been screaming Russiagate and impeachment, they've been giving Trump everything he wants legislatively, right? So if the Democrats were going to actually oppose Trump on substance, they'd have to oppose the establishment which Trump is serving. But turns out the Democrats are the establishment, which is why they gave, as they're calling him a traitor to our country, they gave him increased spying powers. As they're calling him a traitor to our country, they gave him $131 billion extra dollars to go bomb people. Now, would you give somebody $131 extra billion for bombs if you thought he was going to bomb who Putin wanted to be bombed? Right. No, you wouldn't. So that shows you that and this reveals my point to be true. That the reason why they keep you talk about Ukraine. Now, if they're going to impeach Trump for Ukraine, why didn't they impeach Barack Obama for Ukraine? Because he also didn't want to give aid to Ukraine. Need to do why Hillary lost is because people weren't motivated to get off the couch in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania and vote for her. That was the problem. And impeachment and Russiagate does not get people off the couch to vote for them. And that's why Trump, if you look at the latest polling, he's beating every one of the Democrats.
Right. No,
right.
Trump's polling numbers go up the more we try to criticize him. We've talked about this on the Bernie or Bust show before. The other thing is, I've talked about is Biden's son, Hunter, and Nancy Pelosi's son, both hip deep in controversy in Ukraine. So we have to look at the motivation. And if you trust Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer more than you trust Donald Trump, then your biases are deep and wide. All right, now let's look at the problem worldwide that Bernie Sanders is trying to solve, and Nancy Pelosi is not, and Barack Obama is not, and Hillary Clinton is not. All right, I'll stop now. Tom Perez is not.
And that really goes to show you a lot about the ruling elites, doesn't it? Is that they don't want to give an inch. You know, we've spoken about it in the context of the U.S., but they would rather have Donald Trump than mild social democracy advocate Bernie Sanders. What does that tell you about the nature of capital? It tells you they'd rather take fascism over social democracy. They would lean, if you had a case of somebody who even probably self-identified as that, they would take that guy over a social democrat. Because a social democrat would entail a strong degree of redistribution. And with redistribution comes a redistribution of power. And they do not want to give up any money and any power. And so if that means that everybody else needs to suffer, if that means that the streets are going to be filled with people and there's massive unrest, not my problem. I'm in a gated community and I got security guards. So what can actually be done to address a lot of these problems? Well, again, you'd have to go into each individual place to see the nature of their specific problems.
And we've done that somewhat. He mentions Iraq, Iran, Bolivia, Ecuador, I forgot all the other places. But there's unrest in the whole world, and it's workers getting the short end of the stick worldwide. And this is a problem that's been going on for a long time. That's one of the reasons that the Democrats wave shiny objects in front of our faces, like impeachment and Russiagate, is because they don't want the workers to figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago, to quote the late, great George Carlin. And so if the workers are distracted, then maybe that'll postpone the pitchforks. But the pitchforks are coming. Inevitable. This is a NPR article. I'm embarrassed to put an NPR article up here because they had their recent show where they talked about presidential candidates and they left Bernie out. They didn't even mention him, but they got this part right. Jason Bobine. Used to be that the battle to overcome inequality was about money, about helping the poor get better jobs so they could access a larger slice of the economic pie. But that approach to inequality is no longer relevant. In the latest edition of its Human Development Report, the UN Development Program argues don't want to scare anyone, argues that 20th century thinking on global inequality no longer works in the 21st century. The report warns that a new generation of inequities are driving street protests and damaging societies, and they're on track to get worse. Each year, the UNDP looks at human progress around the globe. This year, the authors say that major societal shifts around technology, education, and climate change are creating a new great divergence. Achim Steiner, the UNDP administrator, sums up the problem this way. An increasing number of young people are educated, connected, and stuck with no ladder of choices to move up. So we've got people who know what's going on. George Carlin said, the last thing the powers want is a citizenry capable of critical thinking. And we're getting more and more young people who are capable of critical thinking. I think that bodes ill for the powers. Now here's the real point. Global inequality is now more about disparities in opportunity than disparities in income. So the American dream is that if you work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you can get ahead. But opportunity is not our big strong point anymore. What we are seeing is an opening up of a new generation of inequalities, particularly centered around the emerging middle class of societies, Steiner says. What people perhaps 30, 40 years ago were led to believe and often saw around them was that if you worked hard, you could escape poverty. Yet in many countries today, he says upward social mobility is simply not occurring anymore. The Human Development Report 2019 makes the case that many of the street protests popping up around the globe are driven by a growing sense that societies are rigged to favor the powerful and trap the masses in low-wage, dead-end lives. And those inequities can start even before birth. This new generation of inequality is interesting, Steiner says. It has to do with what you would call the micro inequalities, the things that I perceive as unfair in my country and my community, in my society. Some of those inequities start before birth and burden individuals deep into adulthood. It may and sometimes does have to do with income, Steiner adds, but it may have also a lot to do with the fact that I know today that my child, born into my family, into my neighborhood, already starts life at a significant disadvantage. Editorial comment. I teach at Millersville University and in the state of Pennsylvania. And what I've seen is that our kids come from a real wide variety of places. A lot of them come from Lancaster County, which is bucolic Amish country and pretty deeply conservative. And then I see kids from inner city Baltimore and Philadelphia, and I see a lot of Hispanic kids, lots of people of color in my classes. And I have big classes. I teach really big classes. And what I've seen is that the kids are looking around at each other and they're noticing that they didn't all start the race from the same starting line. And we talk about it in my classes, and it's fascinating when the kids watch each other. They see I say kids because I'm so freaking old. They look around and they see the other students and they realize that things weren't the way they thought they were in the world. They hear people who have cred because they see these kids around them who are their age, who listen to a lot of the same music they do. But then they start to hear their stories in class and they start to realize that things weren't necessarily the way they thought they were in the world. And that's why the workers of the world are waking up. We've been indoctrinated, our media protect us so much from the truth that the kids in our community, the college-age students in our community, don't understand until they meet it face to face what these inequities look like. December national poll, Biden and Sanders pull away from the pack as Warren falls. Now, we've made the argument that Joe Biden is no way proppable. There's no way they can prop him up until Milwaukee. And so they're starting to get desperate here. They anointed Elizabeth. They're anointing Mayor Pete for different reasons. But they both are they're stop Sanders. Elizabeth and Mayor Pete both know that they're in it to stop Bernie. And so what we've got is the latest polling showing that it's not necessarily going to work. Some interesting points here. The base of Sanders' support is younger voters. He receives 36% support from voters under 50. And then way behind is Biden, Warren, and Yang. Voters 50 and over, Biden has a commanding lead, and it says 45%, and everyone else is quite a bit lower. And Buttigieg is quite a bit lower, but what they don't understand is that in Iowa, Buttigieg is doing well with older voters. They understand it, and their polling of early states is also revealing. But what you wouldn't understand from this is that Buttigieg is competitive in Iowa. Another point to jump away from this poll for a second, another point is that Bernie is positioned so that he could win the first three primary contests, and nobody else is positioned to win all three. Now, he may not, but if he does, history shows us that it would be an insurmountable lead, and probably, based on what we see in history, he would win the nomination. So this is interesting, this polling, and I only bring it up to show that that Sanders is right there challenging Joe nationally, but that he leads among Hispanic, Latino voters. He leads with young voters. Among African American voters, Biden holds a large lead, but that lead is being eroded. And it's only, well, that lead is large, and we've talked about that. That's when I bring in Killer Mike and Tim Black and Nico House and Cornel West and the leaders who realize that Bernie is not about identity politics. He's about helping, like Martin Luther King Jr. was, about helping all poor people. I think I've heard this, and put my tinfoil hat back on for a minute. I've heard that the reason Martin Luther King was murdered, assassinated by the CIA, is more about his desire to help all working poor people than his desire to help black people. And Malcolm X was getting onto this same track. And I'd say that is a huge threat to the establishment. And so that's why Bernie is poised here to change history, because the people, the constituents of Martin Luther King Jr. are starting to figure out, especially younger black voters and Latino voters, they're starting to figure out that an old white guy is the answer and identity politics is not the answer. We may come back to this poll in future shows. It depends on how the polling goes from here on in. But this is a harbinger that Bernie is getting some traction. Now, here is why Biden will lose. I've just kind of poo-pooed Biden and never really dug into it. Let's let Sagar dig into it for a bit here.
In fact, if you want to give Michelle and me a good send-off, and that was a beautiful video, but don't just watch us walk off into the sunset now. Get people ready.
Oh, that you would just walk off into the sunset.
Register to vote. If you care about
our legacy,
realize everything we stand for is at stake.
That's true. Everything you stand for is shit, and we need to get down the toilet with it. We need to get rid of it.
All the progress we've made is at stake in this election. My name may not be on the ballot, but our progress is on the ballot.
Oh, yeah.
Tolerance is on the ballot.
Oh,
Democracy is on the ballot.
you asshole.
Justice is on the ballot.
Justice.
Good schools are on the ballot.
Oh, yeah. Sure they are.
Ending mass incarceration, that's on the ballot right now.
Oh, mass incarceration. Incarcerator in chief. You and Biden. Oh, you are the bros. You fixed it beautifully.
How'd that message work out, huh?
No.
Not so well. But as viewers of this show know, what really happened is the working people of this country lost complete faith in the Democratic Party and either stayed at home en masse or they decided to roll the dice on Donald Trump. Now, Joe Biden is giving these people zero reason to change their calculus going into this election. Sure, his anodyne message may be enough to win him the Democratic primary, but how is he supposed to either pull new voters into that process or energize anyone to combat those who drove out to vote for Donald Trump? Interview after interview, Biden makes it crystal clear a vote for him is a return to the Obama years, a return to the halcyon age where we all got along, a return to the relative domestic comforts of the year 2013. But the real question any Democratic campaign should be asking is whether the people who voted for Donald Trump can afford to go back to 2013.
The people who voted for Donald Trump are the same people that the UN report argues are in the streets because of this growing sense that societies are rigged to favor the powerful. That is Obama. That is Biden. That is Buttigieg. That is Elizabeth Warren. Just look at Elizabeth Warren's daughter and look at the talent agencies that are funding both of them, trapping the masses in low-wage, dead-end lives. That's what Obama stands for. That is our legacy, trapping the masses in low-wage, dead-end lives. It's our legacy.
2013, the promises of the Obama administration were revealed to be hollow with rising prices under the Affordable Care Act. In 2013, the Obama administration was continuing in earnest secret negotiations of the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, and in 2013...
That's why the workers need to stand up and pile into the streets and tell Obama and tell Clinton that the TPP is just going to give the corporations more control over the whole world and make them above the law. We've talked about that before. I won't go into that right now.
2013, the Obama administration was at the height of its appeasing of Beijing. 2013 was a great year for the cosmopolitan elites of this country, but it was a complete disaster for the American working class and the industrial Midwest in particular. Biden's strategy is doomed to utter failure because it doesn't even pretend to offer them a new way forward. Make America less terrible again really means make America great for the elites of this country again.
That's right.
And such a message is uniquely tailored for older low-information voters, but not one of inspiration. With the Democratic debate tomorrow, the real question that needs to be asked is what exactly make America less terrible again means for the actual future. What does a Biden trade policy look like? What does a Biden finance policy look like? Candidates would do well to contrast their vision with his own, because right now it appears he's winning this battle, but very much poised to lose the war.
Very good. So Biden is a joke. If you are in favor of helping the working class, then Biden is not the answer. Now, the Obama surrogates have been coming out of the woodwork. Hundreds of Obama alumni endorse Elizabeth Warren. So they're panicking. They don't know who to prop up. And so far it's going to be Elizabeth and Pete, even though they're just not going to help the workers of the world. Hundreds of veterans of Barack Obama's campaigns and administration have signed on to endorse Senator Elizabeth Warren for president as multiple Democratic presidential candidates compete to claim the popular former president's political coalition and legacy. Iowa caucuses. I said that's where they really want Pete to come through. With the Iowa caucuses less than 2 months away, more than 200 Obama alumni joined a signature gathering effort led by a pair of former senior Obama aides, Sarah El Amin and John Carson. Among other roles, El Amin was the national director of Obama's 2012 re-election campaign, while Carson was a national field director for Obama's 2008 campaign prior to joining the administration. Both served as executive directors of Organizing for America, the Obama grassroots organizing network. The list of endorsers shared with CNN includes Robert Ford, ex-U.S. ambassador to Syria, and Sean Carroll, a former senior official at USAID. It also features Obama alumni who are currently working on the Warren campaign full-time, including in senior-most positions, like Warren chief strategist Joe Rossbars, senior advisor Emily Parcell, national political director Rebecca Piercy, and national director of public engagement Alencia Johnson. In an interview with CNN, Elamine and Carson touted the incredible diversity of the group that has come out in support of Warren. The 200-plus names were collected in under a week, and they plan to continue growing the list, they said. So this is just a sign of the panic. Asked about the decision to support Warren over Obama's vice president, Joe Biden, Carson declined to comment. Of course, they're cagey because they really are trying to prop up Joe, even though he's not proppable. Warren, I think, is the long game. I think they're hoping that Warren will, if they can keep Bernie from winning all the opening states, and including California on Super Tuesday, if they can keep Bernie from dominating at the beginning, then they hope that Warren can come back over time when Biden poops out. And even if he doesn't poop out, they can expect Warren to continue to pull votes away, quote, progressive votes away from Bernie. Warren herself is an Obama alum. Yeah. So anyway, Biden frequently lauds Obama's accomplishments in his 8 years in the White House and discusses the close friendship he continues to have with the former president, but they're all sucking up to him. And Warren no less. And Mayor Pete, obviously no less. So if you can see through Obama's charade, then you can see also that Mayor Pete and Elizabeth Warren are on their team. Now this is an interesting little clip here. According to the Rational National, it isn't circulated. It's hard to find. Two clips I'm going to show you are low quality. I've shown you, maybe today is the low quality video clip winner of all time on the Bernie or Bust show. But bear with it, because this clip shows Morning Joe actually telling the truth for a minute. So check this out.
But so Ed, though, I wonder with Bernie Sanders if we have Corbynism without Corbyn. And I only say that because I remember after the 2006...
That part, according to my daughter who lives in the UK, that's not a good point. But the rest of its points are good.
...election. And this shocked, of course, people that are in the media and are in the political class, that are in the political classes. But there were a lot of articles about people who voted for Donald Trump, but would have voted for Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
If Sanders actually made the ticket. And that, of course, where would that be?
Right.
Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Sanders has a certain resonance among working class voters that I think in general elections we haven't seen evidence of Elizabeth Warren having. A lot of people try to lump these two together. I don't think they go hand in hand in some cases if you believe the postmortems in 2016. Mm-hmm.
There was that famous poll, West Virginia, where Trump beat Hillary, I think, the largest margin other than Wyoming. But if Bernie Sanders had been the Democratic nominee, Sanders would have won 48-46. That was an exit poll.
Yeah. So those are good points. The working class, the grubby populism is going to be heard one way or another. Even if it's in the streets, it's going to be heard. Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign takes aim at Pete Buttigieg over wine cave fundraiser. This is hilarious. There were some photos leaked of this wine cave fundraiser. Pretty good photos. Here, this one. You can see Mayor Pete there. You can see the beautiful crystal chandelier. This one right here, this is Pete's face. There was actually a better, photo of Pete on another show that I watched. But it's great because Bernie jumped in here. His staffers are probably his staffers. They jumped in here and are raising money now. They're making money on this. They showed following a Pete Buttigieg fundraiser last weekend that drew widespread attention for its unique and opulent setting in a wine cave in California. The campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders ramped up attacks on the South Bend, Indiana mayor Monday and launched an online fundraising effort of their own that drew inspiration from the event. In an email to supporters Monday evening, Sanders' campaign manager Fez Shakir described the Buttigieg event as having taken place in a wine cave and estimated that the mayor could have brought in as much as $100,000 via the dinner before encouraging those backing Sanders to contribute small amounts in order to match the total. So Sanders supporters see this stuff. He's got over $1 million coming in every month, Bernie Sanders does, with small recurring donations. The pitch followed an afternoon of social media ribbing by a number of Sanders staffers who shared their dismay at the event and expressed a view, frequently espoused by the senator himself, that such private fundraisers result in wealthy donors gaining unique or undue influence over candidates. Sanders' presidential campaign does not hold private high-dollar fundraisers, opting instead to rely on grassroots donors and infrequent low-dollar events with tickets open to the public. The senator doesn't have fundraisers in wine cellars, said former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner, a campaign surrogate at a Sanders event in Rancho Mirage, California, Monday. Buttigieg's event was held at Hall Wines in Rutherford, California on Sunday night, just outside of Napa. Tickets started at $500 to attend, $1,000 to receive a photo, and $28 with Buttigieg, and $2,800 would give attendees access to a dinner with the mayor. The media was not given access to the private dinner, only allowed in during remarks Buttigieg gave in a separate event space prior, where he also took several questions from supporters. Photos from the dinner show an ornate brick room furnished with an expansive chandelier. After receiving criticism and pressure from Warren, the pot calling the kettle black, she said she'll take dark money. She says she'll do whatever is necessary. What did she say? Unilateral disarmament is not what she's after when she goes after Trump. The mayor said his campaign is still a grassroots organization. Sure you are. All right. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the media blackout, the Bernie blackout, and Killer Mike is here to address that on CNN, believe it or not.
Let's bring in activist and Grammy Award-winning rapper Michael Bender, a.k.a. Killer Mike, who is a surrogate for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Killer Mike, good to have you here.
Hey, Anna, it's Render. Also, I don't want my dad to get mad at me. How you doing?
Mike Render, I don't want to mess that up either. I'm sorry to insult you as I introduced you. How dare I?
No, it's not an insult. That's why I said Anna, not Anna, because I took the Spanish classes last week with my man Noriega, and I pronounced it right, so I'm proud of myself. How you doing?
Okay, now that we're past the names, let's talk about the state of the race. And I want to back up for just a moment to a couple of days ago and the election victory for conservatives in the United Kingdom. Joe Biden suggests that bolsters his electability here in the U.S. against President Trump.
That was a bullshit argument. They're trying to say, and this is where my daughter really helped me understand this. It's not about centrism. It's about Brexit. And so the people who abandoned Jeremy Corbyn did so because of his waffling and centrism, really, on that issue of Brexit. So then in jumps the Biden campaign to say, well, this is what happens when you go too far left. Jeremy Corbyn actually wasn't far left enough. If it depends on how you look at it, but it was about Brexit. It wasn't about centrism. It wasn't about being too far left. That's not why their party lost.
Do you see that as a warning shot to progressive candidates about the party moving too far left?
I think that, like the America that dared to stop being colonies and become a country, we need to do the most radical and progressive calls that we can. We need to be radical and progressive in our policy, and we need to not trust, in this moment, fear. We need to not trust saying, let's play it safe. I think we need to play the radical idea that formed America. We need to do that right now and push radical policy. I think that universal health care is doable. I think that wiping away student loans so the next 20 years of students' lives can be invested in making a better America, not just paying back debt, is good. I think trade school is good. I think ending the school-to-prison pipeline is good. And we have to think that radically in order to come to the solutions that we need as a country to progress.
So it explains a lot why you are backing the candidate who is, the revolutionist of sorts, and he's talked about a political revolution. Poll after poll, however, has shown Sanders consistently in second or third. No one can argue that his supporters lack passion for his campaign and his message, but he's not been able to grow his support beyond the teens. Has he hit a ceiling?
I'd like to congratulate him on being the most growth in South Carolina, 7% up in South Carolina. He's up amongst millennials as I see. I hear polls, but you never know who's polling. You never know where they're polling and why. What I know is I walk the streets of America as a musician every day. I'm on and off planes every day. Young people are coming up to me as young as 17, like I'm going to be 18 by this election. I'm voting for him. As old as 28 and 35 to say he's re-energized and regaining me interest in voting. I just left a barbershop full of black people in North Carolina. They are intent on voting for Sanders and people like him. We want progress and we want it now. I don't say the word revolutionary in mockery because we are here as a result of the American Revolution. Had not those colonists dared to dream America, we would not be. If Sanders does not dare to dream the dreams that he's dreaming, we will not have the future that I think is possible in 20 years. So I'm with the revolutionary and I'm with the radical policy.
You're right. He is popular among the younger demographic, but at age 78, he is the oldest of all the 2020 candidates.
Look out. Look out. You're just waving a red flag in front of the bull.
And CNN polls this week out of California and Texas show he only has single-digit support with those 65 and older, and not much more than that even with 45 and older. Historically...
Hey, Boomer. We're going to run you the fuck over. Oh, Mike.
The older voters tend to be the most reliable voters. Does his struggle to connect with them concern you?
No. I think that a lot of times we vote out of fear and we're told what to do by a couple different television stations. I think that if young people get out locally and door knock and engage people that are the age of their parents and grandparents, we'll see those demographics start to change as well.
Yes.
It's time to set fire to the ground locally. The young people that shake my hand in airports, that stop me in restaurants, are going to be the young people putting on Barney t-shirts and going out and knocking on those doors. I don't think that we should in this moment allow fear to negotiate for us. I think that we should negotiate from a place of firmness, of fairness, and knowing what's possible in 20 years and not living off the fear of the 20 years prior.
Next week is the next Democratic primary debate, and only one candidate of color qualified, Andrew Yang. How do you make sense of that?
I don't use the term color because my grandparents warned me against the term colored. I don't care what color you are. I care how your policy affects my community. I'm black from a black city in Atlanta. I'm from a place where 54% of all African Americans live, and that's the South. And in terms of communities of color, be they black, Latino, or other ethnicities, I think that the policy of Sanders' campaign, much like the Poor People's Campaign of Dr. King or Eugene Debs' campaign 100 years ago before him, it is aligned for all people, not just people of color, not just white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, but all people, which includes my community, the black community.
Sometimes people assume minority voters will automatically support minority candidates. You're obviously an example of how that's not always true. You support Sanders. Joe Biden, for example, continues to have the most support of all the candidates among black voters in places like South Carolina. Why aren't the candidates of color, the minority candidates in this race, resonating more?
I don't have the answer to those questions as I wasn't in their campaign. The campaign I'm with has risen 7 points in South Carolina, and that's Sanders' campaign. And it's because he's not asking you to vote for him on matters of color or matters of people of color or matters of just being black, on just matter of being sympathetic to our cause for over 60 years, because he was the guy that was chained to black people protesting 50, 60 years ago. He's asking because his policy directly affects our community. Well, how does it do that, Michael? We know that disproportionately health care is something that's not afforded to black and poor people in this country. His policy directly affects that. We know that the school to prison pipeline must be ended. We know that his tuition program for trade and college programs help to end that. We know that we need restorative justice in matters of marijuana. His policy does that. And we know we need to radically end how we deal with prisoners and addiction in this country, and he also deals with that.
Killer Mike absolutely blew the doors off of that interview.
He blew the doors off that interview. I just love that. Keep on burning, Killer Mike. Keep killing him. So thank you for that footage and progressive voice. Thank you. Thank you, David Dole. Thank you, Crystal Ball. Thank you, Sagar and Jetty. Thank you, Jimmy Dore. Thank you for all the excellent information. I'll keep on keeping on here, compiling it and giving you my ideas on my overview, my cynical old person worldview. I'm a boomer too, by the way, so when I make fun of boomers, don't jump too hard on me. I'm a fellow boomer with you. So let's keep on burning together. Let's keep telling the truth. Keep sharing and spreading this word, this TV station. And as we go into the holidays, we really don't have much time afterwards to see if we can disrupt the Buttigieg movement in Iowa and Warren overall. They're just sock puppets of the oligarchs, and we need to take them down. All right, hope to see you tomorrow. Get on board the Bernier bus train. Come get on board the Bernier bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board